A few weeks ago, one of my favorite YouTubers, McCullough, made 2 videos about famous speeches from around the world.
And today, I want to talk about famous national speeches.
His first video focused on Canadian, American, and British speeches, while his second video focused on more of an international look at famous speeches, covering countries such as Germany, India, and many, many more. But he left out New Zealand, my home country, so allow me to make this video as a footnote to JJ's series, and talk about the most important speech in New Zealand's history, based on my personal opinion, of course.
I can smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
Okay, Boomer.
We have the most enormous big gay rainbow across my electorate.
They're not going to win an election.
Let's keep moving!
So if you know anything about New Zealand, you'll know that we're internationally known for a handful of things. Sheep, Lord of the Rings, and our hard stance against nuclear technology. After the dropping of the first atomic bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it was an arms race where it seemed like every country wanted to get their hands on this fun new toy. But unlike America, who had all this desert to test their bombs, many European nations turned to the Pacific as a great place to test their bombs, out of the way of their citizens. But it was right in my backyard. New Zealand and other island nations in the Pacific despised this testing, as it seemed to be a flagrant disregard to our environment and our ecosystem. This led to a movement of activism in New Zealand over the moral issue of nuclear bombs. Not just the problem with them being in our backyard, but more broadly about the moral issues that come with nuclear bombs. At this time, Australia didn't really kick up much of a fuss, which was a mix between them cozying up to the States and the fact that they had rich uranium mines that were a good export. Not trying to discount Australia, as there was a big anti-nuclear movement there too, it's just not to the same extent. This led to New Zealand banning nuclear ships in New Zealand waters, which led to a strain in our relationship with the Americans, as America had a strict policy not to confirm or deny whether a ship had nuclear material on it. This led to American ships being disqualified for entering our harbours. This made international news, with our historical allies condemning New Zealand for their actions.
We do consider the denial of port access as a matter of grave concern, which goes to the core of our mutual obligation as allies.
It's our deepest hope that New Zealand will restore the traditional cooperation that has existed between our two countries. Allies must work together as partners to meet their shared responsibilities.
New Zealand, I am as disappointed as you are in the approach taken by the New Zealand Prime Minister. He's very much aware of my views.
The Prime Minister of New Zealand, David Lange, was invited to Oxford to defend his country's actions at the Oxford Union, where he would debate American televangelist Jerry Falwell on the morality of nuclear weapons. He was warned against going to this by all his advisors, but the Prime Minister accepted the challenge and went to Oxford. Prime Minister David Lange was welcomed with a standing ovation from all members of the Oxford Union, an appreciation for the fact that New Zealand's Prime Minister would come all the way to Oxford to defend his country's ideals. The monologue he gave at Oxford has become part of New Zealand folklore, where he articulately and intelligently outlined his and New Zealand's moral problems with the bomb.
The argument advanced here tonight, the 50 million killed over 4 years by concerted war in a conventional sense in Europe. And the argument that somehow the existence of this mutually assured destruction phenomenon has since that time preserved this planet from destruction. It is, I think, probably an example of Northern Hemisphere or European arrogance that we overlook now the 30 million people in this world who have died in wars since then, while we are apparently beset from the 2 superpowers by a system designed to have people stop killing each other. I believe that the fear they inspire is not a justification for their existence.
A great thing he added was not just your usual arguments against nuclear weapons, but he defended New Zealand's autonomy from America and the United Kingdom, and said that New Zealand could pass whatever laws they wanted, as they were a sovereign nation and did not need to ask these larger countries for permission. But the line that everyone and their mothers knows in New Zealand from the speech is the witty remark that he gave to someone who interrupted him while he was giving his speech.
Means of destruction. I want to pass up, yeah.
What I should like to know, sir, is why you don't do the honorable and the consistent thing and pull out of the ANZUS alliance. For whether you are snuggling up to the bomb or living in the peaceful shadow of the bomb, New Zealand benefits, sir, and that's the question with which we charge you, and that's the question with which we would like an answer, sir.
And I'm going to give it to you if you hold your breath just for a moment. I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
This line summed up everything that New Zealand was fighting against. The pro-bomb activists were drunk on the idea that nuclear armament was the superior stance, with no regard for the view of the people who wished to not have it forced upon them in their waters. This line is so funny and memorable, actually being misremembered by a lot of people as just being, I can smell the uranium on your breath. Kinda like a Luke, I am your father type situation, a famous line being misremembered en masse. After his speech, he received another standing ovation.
Is to assert what is human over the evil nature of the weapon. It is to restore to humanity the power of decision. It is to allow a moral force to reign supreme. It stops the macho lurch into mutual madness. And for me, the position of my country is a genuine, long-term affirmation of this proposition, that nuclear weapons are morally indefensible, and I support that proposition.
A standing ovation from here in the Oxford Union for the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Mr. David Lange.
And after the debate, the vote was that Lange had won the debate.
It has taken 2 hours to tabulate the vote, and the chamber is almost empty now. The number of votes opposed to the motion that nuclear weapons are morally indefensible is 250, and the number of votes in favor of the motion is 298. So Prime Minister Lange and his team carry the motion by nearly 50 votes.
After this debate at Oxford, New Zealand fully banned nuclear testing in their waters, and through various treaties, nuclear testing was banned in the South Pacific entirely. In modern times, there is actually no nuclear weapons in the Southern Hemisphere, since South Africa got rid of their nukes in 1989. Another big part of New Zealand's anti-nuclear fight was the bombing of the Rainbow Warrior, a terrorist attack undertaken by the French government in New Zealand soil, which happened just months after Lange's Oxford debate, but I think it would be best to talk about this event in a future video. Nuclear-free New Zealand is a part of New Zealand's culture, being a piece of pride for its countrymen. Even the current Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has drawn parallels between the nuclear-free moment to her climate change proposals, trying to spark the same kind of activism that we saw under David Lange. Even though David Lange was the Prime Minister for 5 years, he is mostly remembered for his nuclear-free policies and his speech at Oxford, which he actually outlined as the greatest moment of his life.